So this is actually, in some ways, it was, in terms of complexity and time devoted, might have been the most complex and time-consuming of all my Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur talks. And I'm very happy I devoted the time to it, because it's not an easy subject. I don't mean it's not emotionally easy, it's just not easy. It's intellectually, morally not easy, religiously. So by way of introduction, I don't know if any of you ever heard me tell this story about my own life, but if you did, it's worth hearing again. It's a great introduction to the topic. So I grew up with Christian envy. It was a variation on Freud's famous envy, but I'll leave that off the bima. But I'm not kidding. I remember when I first learned, because I was always enthralled by the other. It's what took me to 130 countries, all the states, immersion with people of other faiths. It's my nature. I take no credit for it, but it is my nature. So I asked I guess I must have been my father. He was tuning in the car, and he's past a Christian evangelist. And so what do Christians believe, Dad? That you have to believe in Jesus, and then you're saved. And what else? Well, you have to believe in Jesus, and then you're saved. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. I have to keep kosher? I can't drive on Shabbos? I can't, and then I went through just a few of the lists of my prohibitions, and all they have to do is believe in Jesus? And of course, as I've come to know Christians, for a serious Christian, it's a lot more demanding than just that. The reason I tell you the story is as an introduction to my topic. I stopped having Christian envy at about year 5 of my interfaith broadcast, Religion on the Line, on ABC radio here in Los Angeles. Each week, for 10 years, every week I had dialogue with a priest, minister, rabbi, and different ones each week. So I got an immersion in Christian life and thinking. It was a blessing. It turned out to be so important in my life. When did I stop having Christian envy? One day, it occurred to me that Christians sort of made a trade. They traded in guilt over ritual behavior for guilt over thought. I never had heard in all of my years of yeshiva education that we would be guilty for thoughts. I'm not saying it's absent from any Jewish thinking. There's no idea that's fully absent from Jewish thought. The Talmud is the size of the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's got every thought in it, but it's not normative. And I went to yeshiva till I was 19. I don't remember 1 hour devoted to sinful thoughts. It was all sinful behavior. And the Christians on my panel, whether Catholic or Protestant, would frequently, regularly note how sinful thoughts are serious matters. And I remember resolving, I rather feel guilty over behavior than over thought. This was a very big deal. And ever since, I have tried to understand the concept of a sinful thought. And I'm here really to think aloud with you about the subject. I mean, if you asked anybody, if somebody keeps fantasizing about robbing a bank, so what would you say? It doesn't matter? Nobody would say it doesn't matter. If you know, I can't wait till can't wait till I do, because that's planning, that's not the same thing. But, you know, I wish I could rob a bank. So it's an interesting question, even on that level. If you wish you could rob a bank, but you stop yourself from doing so because you think it's wrong, is that a sin? It's a sin if you want to rob a bank and the only thing stopping you is you think you'll get caught. But what if the thing that is stopping you is your conscience? Or better, God said, do not steal. I want to rob a bank, but God said, I can't steal. The Talmud actually does say, Rambam, the greatest Jewish philosopher, Maimonides says, you should not think that pig is disgusting. You should think it is so delicious, I want to eat it. But the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, has told me I can't eat it, so I won't. So ironically, Maimonides is saying a sinful thought is a mitzvah. You should want to eat non-kosher food. What's the greatness of keeping kosher if you think pig is disgusting? Or octopus, which is disgusting. No, it's just I have no idea. But so I'm only beginning to show you the complexity of the question of, is sinful thought sinful? Is there such a thing as sinful thought? So anyway, that ended my Christian envy. I think this. I'm choosing words so carefully because there are people of all faiths here, and you know how much I honor you. I rather restrict my guilt to behavior than to include thought. I rather, both for my own peace of mind and I think for my own moral behavior. I think that if you preoccupy yourself with what you do, you will probably do less bad, but I'll come to that. So, proposition number one, if thoughts are sinful, are they as sinful as actions? So this is what I would ask my Christian friends who believe in sinful thought in a very strong way. I can't believe any Christian would say it's as sinful. And I'm going to get to the famous Jesus quote from Matthew. There are two famous Jesus quotes that I'll get to, which I'll analyze for a moment, because that's a big part of the thinking coming from those verses. But I can't believe anyone would say a bad thought is as bad as a bad action. None of you really care if somebody wishes they mugged, but you do care if you're mugged. I mean, it's so self-evident, I don't need to belabor the point. The question is, did Jesus say that lusting after a woman is equivalent to actual adultery? I don't think he did. I'm pretty certain he didn't. But that's where most Christians get the idea, that and one other verse about anger, that actions and thoughts can be equally sinful. But I don't think that I have to make that point to almost anybody here. I don't think I have to make it even to the Christians who are here. So, in effect, I could end my talk at this moment. I could just say, we're all in agreement that as sinful as a thought may be, it doesn't compare in seriousness to the actual doing of the act. If even I think about killing somebody, any one of you would much prefer that I think about killing you than if I kill you. You would not, oh, he thought about killing me. It's the same as if he killed me. Nobody would say that. Okay, so that's really, really important. Even if thoughts are sins, they are not the same as acts. So, by the way, why do I even raise this topic? Because my preoccupation is with people abstaining from evil and doing good. My preoccupation is overwhelmingly action-centered. If the Germans had hated Jews but didn't have the Holocaust, we wouldn't really care that they hated Jews. It's when hatred of Jews expresses itself in genocide that we really care about it. Okay. So there's another reason. I have a feeling that human beings, this might be worth talking about during the break. This is not science-based, and it may be totally wrong, but I have a feeling that there's only so much guilt most people, there's nothing true about all people. Most people have a certain amount of guilt in their composition. And if you expend a lot of that guilt on thoughts, I have a sense it might detract from guilt over actions. I want people to overwhelmingly feel guilt over actions because that's what matters, I think, and because I want you to be at peace. And you're not going to be at peace if you keep monitoring your thoughts. Or that's how I look at the issue. But let me go to the Jesus quote, because that's, I think, where Christians get the idea. Matthew 5:27, you have heard it was said, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. So, the more I've studied Jesus, the more I have tried to study him as a religious Jew, which is what he was. That's what he was. He was a religious Jew. But when I asked, every so often I would ask the Catholic and Christian clergy on the show, if Jesus came back today, where would he go to pray? Every single one said a synagogue. Not one said church, which is to their intellectual honesty. The man was a religious Jew. He really wouldn't know what a church was. There were no churches in his day. He davened, as we put it, in a synagogue. But anyway, so I try to understand him as a religious Jew. Would a religious Jew say, is there any basis for a religious Jew saying, if you lust after a woman, you have committed adultery with your heart? And I couldn't come up with one. So in defense of Jesus, I couldn't believe he said lust. Because I know this will sound odd to non-Jews here, but there's no ban on lust in normative Judaism. I mean, if you ask an Orthodox rabbi, is it okay if I lust? He'll say, no. But again, in 15 years of yeshiva, I never was taught not to lust. What I was taught is the 10th commandment, not to covet. Covet and lust have little to do with one another. They're not synonyms. And sure enough, I looked it up. I don't know Greek, but you can use concordances and figure out where words are used. All these words have numbers. And the number for the word that Jesus uses in Matthew is the same as the number for the word of the 10th commandment. So Jesus did not say, whoever lusts after a woman has committed adultery in his heart. He said, whoever covets, and that would be Jewish. That is correct. You can't covet. What does covet mean? I want to take away what belongs to my neighbor. So you can covet, and by the way, the proof that it's not lust is no one lusts for a house. I mean, we might use the term "I lust for a house," but in the erotic sexual realm, nobody lusts for a house, and very few, not none, lust for a donkey, which is also forbidden. You can't covet anything, and that's the Hebrew. It begins your house, his spouse, his donkey, and v'chol asherlo, anything he possesses, you cannot covet. What does covet mean? It doesn't mean jealous, and it doesn't mean lust. Jealousy is not, or envy, Steve has a thought on the difference, but either one is not banned. There's no ban on envy or jealousy. They're not good ideas, or one of them isn't, but it's not a ban. Covet is different. It means I want to take away what belongs to you. In other words, I don't want a house like yours. I want your house. That's banned. It is the only thought in the Ten Commandments that's banned. It is one of the only thoughts in the entire Torah that's banned. And the reason is because it will probably lead to the violation of the previous four, of do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness. They're all based on coveting. Stealing is the obvious. I covet your money, I stole it. Or I covet your house, I covet your wife, I stole her, that's adultery, and so on. I covet, and it leads ultimately to murder. But other than that, there is no ban on thought in the Torah. When you have 613 laws, you would think at least one of them would ban thought, and that is a very specific one. So Jesus says what I said. There's another reason he's not correctly understood. He didn't say lust, he said covet, and there's another one. He said, you have committed adultery with your heart. Jesus would not have said, as a religious Jew, he would not have said, if you lust after a woman, it's as if you've committed adultery. He would not have said that. It doesn't make sense. You mean fantasizing that woman is the same as actually sleeping with her? It's not correct. But he's right. If you covet a woman, that is, you covet a married woman, then it is as if you have committed adultery with your heart. That is fine. I have no issue with that. But Christians have taken it to mean that thoughts are sins. And I think it's way too big a leap. Here's another example. By the way, I had a dialogue with one of the greatest living Christian thinkers, Wayne Grudem, in Phoenix many years ago. The guy's a giant. He's written a compendium of biblical values, the likes of which doesn't exist anywhere else, applying the Bible to every issue in modern life. So I asked him, when we discussed this, I said, well, what if a single Christian man lusts after a single woman? Since adultery is not possible, he's not married and she's not married, is that forbidden? To his credit, he said he was never asked that question, to which I responded, you don't normally dialogue with Jews. And he agreed. And but he finally said, no, it's not a sin. She can't commit adultery, he can't commit adultery, so there's no, you can't even commit adultery with your heart. You've lusted. You're not married with to the woman that you lusted for. He actually said, it might be a good thing, otherwise no guy would get married. If he doesn't lust for anybody, how's he going to get married? This is a major Christian thinker, and he's right. So lust is not the issue, it's the context. Okay, just want to make that clear. Okay, now, so there is, in Matthew 5, this is also Jesus. You have heard that it was said, thou shalt not kill. It's actually, thou shalt not murder. And whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. That everybody agrees. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother shall be in danger of the judgment. That's another example of thought. Anger is a thought, or if you will, a feeling. So is Jesus saying that anger is equivalent to murder? No, he's not, just as he wasn't saying originally that lusting is equivalent to adultery. So first of all, this you'll find fascinating. I did not know this till I did the research. The King James Version has the following: whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And that's, which we just, by the way, didn't we just do this? Sinat chinam. Baseless, causeless hatred. That's where he got it from. It's exactly right. It's a bad thing, hating for no good reason. But Christian scholars are not certain what the original text was. The oldest manuscript, according to one scholar, is Papyrus 67, which does not have without a cause. Thus, you shouldn't get angry at all. That said, scholars Daniel Judd and Alan Stoddard compiled a list of the earliest and most reliable manuscripts of Matthew 5:22, and most of them do include without a cause. The debate over the correct reading dates back to the early Christian fathers themselves. The 4th century Catholic priest who translated the Latin Vulgate Bible, Jerome, said, in the authentic codices, the statement is unqualified and anger is completely forbidden. For if we are commanded to pray for those who persecute us, every occasion for anger is eliminated. Without a cause should be deleted. The Catholic bishop, John Chrysostom, I never thought I would be quoting John Chrysostom positively. He had big anti-Semitic statements. But nevertheless, other than that, he was a great guy, who lived at the same time as Jerome, disagreed. John Chrysostom said, he who is angry with cause will not be guilty, for without anger, teaching will be ineffective, judgments unstable, and crimes unchecked. It makes perfect sense. God gets angry. So I think Jesus said without cause. That's the way the Hebrew would have phrased it. Sinat chinam, hatred without cause, or he would say anger without cause. And God gets angry, and we're supposed to imitate God. If God gets angry, we can't get angry. So those are the two big, I think they are, Christians will correct me if I'm wrong, the big sources for the notion of sinful thoughts. I don't think that that either of them lead to a general belief that thoughts are sinful. You want to be happy? Write it down. Then you will do what the founders of this country wrote: pursue happiness. I want people to pursue happiness. It's a beautiful pursuit. What has God demanded of you except that you love righteousness, act justly, and walk humbly with your God? I admit I want you to have this richness. And you can. I don't know if any of you ever heard me tell this story about my own life, but if you did, it's worth hearing again. They wrote this 2,000 years ago. Let tyranny be removed from the earth. No one makes the case for atheism more effectively than an unhappy religious person. It's beyond belief how good it is.